So this Week 14 matchup between my San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks, in contrast to what happened 2 weeks prior where they met on Thanksgiving, was actually a little bit more interesting, mind you. And that was because the main centered storyline around the Seahawks because of the sudden groin injury of their starting quarterback, Geno Smith. Was he or was he not going to be able to play this game? And then we found out just hours before game time that Geno Smith did try to do warm-ups, and it seemed like that, okay, he's struggling in warm-ups. We're not going to risk him out there. So we're going to give the keys to the core to Drew Lock, the backup quarterback and former starter of the Denver Broncos. He didn't start a game for 2 years now, but this is his opportunity to try and prove himself. But as I said in my preview for this game, for the 49ers, it doesn't matter if it was Geno Smith or Drew Lock under center. They still had a mission in this game. Take care of your damn business. You knew what was on the line here from here on out, especially after you had that big statement win last week against the Philadelphia Eagles on the road in Philadelphia. And especially considering if Philadelphia slipped up at least one game, hopefully even more than that, the goal was pretty simple. You wanted to win as many games as possible, pretty much win from here on out and get the number one seed in the NFC. So that mission began here at home against the Seahawks. So every game mattered at this point from here on out. And the only thing of concern, at least for me, a little bit of concern was, coming off of that emotional win, coming off that highly intense game against Philadelphia where, yeah, the 49ers did make a big impact in that game, but there were a lot of emotions running high coming off that game. That being said, it was kind of a similar emotional feeling going into that game because considering what happened back in Week 5 after they whooped Dallas's ass, they came into Week 6 against the skid marks, a.k.a. the Browns. Not exactly performing up to their usual standards, and we all know what happened from there. But in terms of this game, boy, did they actually reverse that narrative a little bit. Because you want to talk about fast starts for my San Francisco 49ers, let's talk about very, very fast starts for this game. Because now as we transition towards our actual recap for Week 14, they got off to a very fast start. On the very first play of the game, Christian McCaffrey busted through a big hole on both sides of the ball with a very big run on the very first play of the game. And then just literally not even a minute into the game, it's 7-0 49ers as Jordan Mason took the rock at the goal line. And yeah, the Niners already have a touchdown in the game. So, damn, that's the very big explosive play early on in the game. But pump the brakes a bit, ladies and gentlemen, because now we get to see how Drew Lock answers the call. And he actually did provide an answer for Seattle because he tested the 49ers passing defense early and with some success. Because especially considering that corner Charvarius Ward stepped out with some kind of, I thought it was a knee issue, but it ended up being a groin issue that kept him out for the rest of the game. And I hope it's not very serious, but we will see as the week goes on, going on to the next game. But nonetheless, Drew Lock managed to actually test the Niners defense early. So that was kind of a little concerning because, like I said, you didn't want to have a letdown game here, especially on that back end. So they knotted up at 7. Drew Lock connected with DK Metcalf on a catch that not the announcers and not even myself thought he caught because he burned Ambry Thomas on a lob pass. So Ambry Thomas was filling in for Charvarius Ward, who stepped out with that injury. So, all right, it's knotted up at 7. Still pretty early on in the game. Maybe they're still trying to catch their breath, but hell. So not much goes on throughout the rest of the quarter because Brock Purdy and the offense, they're kind of struggling, trying to solve the riddle of Seattle's defense. And Seattle was shutting down Christian McCaffrey, and they're covering up all of Brock Purdy's passing options. And on the offensive end for Seattle, they were utilizing Zach Charbonnet, who they didn't have in the first matchup 2 weeks ago, to attack the edges they were running outside compared to the middle. And well, for at least for Seattle's running attack, they did have an advantage in this go round, not only by having Zach Charbonnet. They the 49ers run defense, they didn't have Eric Armstead to cover up the middle. So that was a little bit of an advantage for Seattle as they tried to utilize the running attack to help out Drew Lock. So as the second quarter goes down, all that momentum that the 49ers had, like they had positive momentum going to the second quarter because Brock Purdy got a big throw and catch to Brandon Ayuk. Unfortunately, that was sapped away because safety and Julian Love nabbed an interception off a deflected pass because Brock Purdy was kind of under a lot of pressure, and maybe it was the route that Brandon Ayuk ran, and the communication was very off, clearly, and I'm not sure why Brock Purdy decided to throw that ball still, but nonetheless, not exactly a good ball that he should be throwing. Should have just thrown away. Or, I don't know, maybe taking a sack wasn't also a wise answer, but nonetheless, a turnover by San Francisco. So they did later on get back into rhythm on their next chance out there, and they had Christian McCaffrey running left compared to in the middle, which didn't work. Running left is a big key of success for San Francisco from this point on, because it clearly worked in Philadelphia, and it worked here on this series. So in this series, Brock Purdy did take a big sack, but he redeemed himself 2 plays later because they took a 14-10 lead off a Purdy deep ball to Deebo Samuel. He beat Jamal Adams, the safety, on a mismatch. And all right, maybe the Niners are starting to catch a little bit of fire. And the 49ers defense was also starting to catch a little bit of fire on Drew Lock as they stopped the run and they managed to keep Lock's receivers on check, especially DK Metcalf, who, as they pointed out, he hadn't had a catch. He hadn't been targeted since that touchdown catch. So they forced a punt, but unfortunately, there were still some miscommunication issues between Purdy and his receivers, and, well, they could have put more points on the board, but they could not, as that was the end of the first half. So, this was clearly going to be a hard-fought battle, a tough one for the 49ers because, yes, Seattle, they clearly had something to play for in this game because their playoff hopes were on life support. They had lost, 3 straight, including to us, and they were also trotting out a backup quarterback in Drew Lock. They had no Geno Smith, but they were clearly playing desperate in this game, and, they came in to play. And for the 49ers, the offense, they could have had some drives continue, but they suffered from a couple of clear communication problems that allowed potential opportunities to keep Seattle around. Meanwhile, like I said, Seattle's offense, they were very aggressive with Drew Lock under center. That's not to say Geno Smith is aggressive, but you notice the uptick in aggressiveness with Drew Lock. They were going with a lot more explosive plays than usual. The running game was more apparent with Zach Charbonnet, Kevin Walker back in their lineup. The Niners were, though, able to sniff them out late in the second quarter. But still, Seahawks were able to play the Niners tough. It was a much closer game compared to the Thanksgiving matchup they had. So, the Niners had to be careful here. If they didn't make the right adjustments, if they didn't tighten up in the second half, or if they didn't keep scoring, Seattle could have made it more than just an interesting game. They could have let this one slip away. Fortunately, in the third quarter, the Niners managed to take control, but I felt like there was a little bit of missed opportunity to start the third quarter because they had an interception slip away. DeMondre Lenore couldn't quite haul in an interception off of Drew Lock on their opening possession, but damn, that was just tough break there. And then Mitch Wisnowski, the punter, after the Niners went 3-and-out on their opening series of the half, I thought that he could have had the play of the game because, he said, punters could have fun too, because he called his own number. He decided to, let's call a fake punt. Let's take that big bitch run for a big first down. But unfortunately, the refs said, no, we can't let you have too much fun there because a lit hit on Wisnowski from, I'm not sure which Seattle player it was. It was offsetted by Ronnie Bell also being called for blocking below the waist. That sucked. That absolutely sucked, man. But if you go back and watch the highlights, though, or even watch like the film, it was clear and obvious that Bell lost his footing. He just simply slipped on the turf. You also noticed that a lot of players were slipping on the turf in that game. I mean, it's not like artificial turf; it's like real grass on that Levi Stadium. So I'm not sure what exactly was going on in that game. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not no expert in like turf maintenance or like all that. I mean, if that's even a thing, but I noticed a lot of players were slipping in that game. Not because of missed tackles. I mean, there were certainly some in this game, but a lot of players were slipping on that turf. Kind of interesting. But anyway, the Niners lost a big game-changing play because of ref ball. Because of course, ref ball just had to get involved in this game at some point. But that's pretty much like one of the only few major instances of ref ball. So Drew Lock, he was given some extended time on his next series because I don't know why Steve Wilkes, sometimes he's very insistent on calling an all-out blitz on third down. I mean, he really needs to stop doing that. He's only had I think one or two times that he's had success with that, and then all the other times it's failed. It's really failed miserably. But he did redeem himself though. He had a few times where he moved Nick Bosa inside the defensive line. And on this series that he did, on another 3rd and long, it forced Drew Lock out of the pocket, and then Dre Greenlaw stopped him to force a punt. So that was good. And then the offense caught fire afterwards again. They began attacking with their biggest strength on the offense, and that was Trent Williams and the left side of the offensive line. So they managed to march down the field, and then they were up 21-10 after Deebo Samuel got an end-around goal line run. But unfortunately, Drew Lock, once again, answered the call. And all of a sudden, dang, we're in shootout territory. And he made it, once again, a one-score game. 21-16 right after that. And then by this point, this was a clearly much different game than the one that we got on Thanksgiving. Seattle showed a lot more fight with Drew Lock under center. Despite the 49ers defense, they were kind of, they had a couple injuries. With Charvarius Ward, Javon Hargrave. Dre Greenlaw left the game at one point, but then he came back. But yeah, Seattle was fighting. Like I said, they were clearly fighting for their playoff lives here. And they were not willing to go down easily. So, that classic division rivalry there, pal. So the 49ers in the fourth quarter, they punched the Seahawks right back in the mouth as Brock Purdy got in that another explosive play. He found George Kittle right in the middle and wide open as he burned Julian Love to give the 49ers a 28-16 advantage. And then from there, the 49ers, they kind of struggled trying to put away the Seahawks just a tad bit because they seemed like they were going to have the home run shot with Brandon Ayuk. But unfortunately, he fumbled the ball. He had the ball punched out by Julian Love. He redeemed himself pretty much on that burnt coverage. So Julian Love saved a game-ending touchdown potentially. And then prior to that, Jair Brown nabbed an interception from Drew Lock. So pretty much both teams were trading turnovers. And then from there, it was just pretty much we're kind of struggling to actually close out the game for both of these teams. So we get to near the end of the game here, and the 49ers have pretty much had to give the ball back to Seattle, and now the 49ers offense, they pretty much put their defense in another position where they have to pretty much close this game out. Pretty much a similar situation where that Week 11 game against Baker Mayfield and the Bucs, they pretty much had to close the gap because their offense, they couldn't necessarily put it away. I mean, that's not, I don't know, maybe it's their fault, but I don't want to put blame on them too much. But anyway, they had to put the lock on the Lock, who was now tasked with trying to put his team into giving one last gasp of life. So Drew Lock did manage to get his team past midfield. They actually converted a fourth down, but that was mainly due to a penalty by Nick Bosa. But that was pretty much all they could muster. Chase Young impacted the game-altering pass from Drew Lock and that resulted in an interception from Fred Warner. And then pretty much it was all shenanigans from there because DK Metcalf, he was finally enough of the bullshit. He was finally over it, the lack of involvement from the coaching, his quarterback, and he was just all up in his emotions. He was being a big baby. And especially considering that he took a late hit from Fred Warner, and he was like, okay, I've had enough of this bull crap. Let's pick some fights. Let's instigate some shit. And then the bench is cleared. Everyone got up in DK Metcalf's face. And then for the reward of his stupidity, Metcalf was ejected. But unfortunately also was the emoji Lenore. But after things settled, pretty much it was all said and done. Everything was set in stone. The 49ers converted on both of their third downs. And yeah, that was pretty much the game. They sealed a hard-fought game and this season sweep of the Seahawks, 28-16. Yeah, the 49ers are 10-3. Then they're just a couple steps closer to clinching the division. And depending on what happens with the Eagles and Cowboys game, I mean, it's at the time of making this, it's still ongoing. They're a couple steps closer to hopefully clinching the top seed. But that's a step that we're kind of getting a little too ahead of ourselves. Baby steps, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, the Niners have to be careful here, though. They have to be careful here because this is another game where they entered another similar situation as the Tampa Bay game. They did finish. They did hold them off. They did hold off Seattle, but Kyle Shanahan needs to be careful with this team, considering that they're letting their opposition hang around for too long. So Kyle Shanahan needs to have his team, needs to have his both sides of the ball close the gap, especially on offense, because if his offense can't close the gap, it could bite his team in the ass eventually. And you don't want that. You don't want that. You don't want a game where they can't close the book and you have such a big lead and then you just blow it into dust. So you have to be really careful letting these teams hang around for too long. So just trying to help you out there. So speaking of Seattle, I mean, yeah, they really tried here, but unfortunately it just wasn't enough. But I will say they do function a little bit better with Drew Lock. I mean, not to say that, Geno Smith's a bad quarterback or anything, but it's just that, I guess Drew Lock's mobility helps him a tad bit. Like his slight mobility helps him a little bit because he had some early success. He gets out of the pocket a lot more than Geno Smith does, and he really tested the Niners defense with a lot more deep passes than Geno does. I don't know if that was in the game plan, but I don't know. I feel like there were a lot more big, deep passes than there were with Geno. And he was able to get more of his receivers involved. I mean, yeah, they definitely need to get DK Metcalf more involved because there was an overall reliance on Metcalf when Geno was under center, like in the games prior. But I feel like there was a lot less of DK involved when they needed him most here. So, I don't know. There needs to be some kind of balance for Seattle to try and keep their hopes alive, or at least win another game. But nonetheless, fault is at place for not trying to get Metcalf involved more, but at least for them, they got the likes of Tyler Lockett more involved, as well as Jackson Smith and Jigba to a degree. So looking ahead for the 49ers, they unfortunately cannot claim their postseason ticket yet because the Minnesota Vikings won their very ugly game against the Vegas Raiders in that very bad game that went 3-0. And the Packers have yet to play their game against the Giants because that's a Monday night game, but it's likely that they win their game. So that being said, I mean, one step at a time for San Francisco. So looking ahead to next week against the Arizona Cardinals, the Niners, if they're eligible to do such, they are looking to wrap up the NFC West division on the road against Arizona in Arizona. But in this meeting, it's going to be a bit different. As instead of Josh Dobbs that they're facing, they're going to be facing Kyler Murray. And, with the 49ers history in facing Kyler Murray in, how long has it been now? The last 4 years. They had some mixed results. Mixed results facing Murray, especially with his super mobility. But it should be one of those games that the Niners have to be careful, again, not to have a letdown coming off a hot emotional game like this one, especially towards the end, as well as the last the game prior. But for this game, Arizona is coming off its very late, out of date bye week, and the Niners, coming off that emotional win. So the Niners still on a mission, like a super technician, to claim the NFC West, and hopefully even more than that. But one game at a time, ladies and gentlemen, one game at a time. But anyway, that is my recap. Those are my thoughts on this Week 14 win for my San Francisco 49ers against the Seattle Seahawks. They won this game 28-16 to move up to 10-3 and one step closer to clinching the NFC West once again. But one game at a time, pal. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on the 49ers win this week in the comments below. And as always, keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge with your takes on the world of sports. And until the next one, until the next Niners game, peace out.